Hi, I'm Mya Griesbaum, founder of Mycorrhiza Fashion, a startup helping to heal the planet by transforming textile waste with fungi. So right now, environmental scientists, geologists, meteorologists, oceanographers are all collecting data of different forms that reveal how our planet is currently changing. And using their databases, I've created a visual that maps the trajectory at which Earth's climate and highlights where we may be headed. Okay, so can anyone tell from the visual what's happening? It's not a trick question either. Ooh, tough crowd. Okay, so it's a dumpster fire essentially. So at our current rate, Earth is on track to becoming a floating dumpster fire. I know this seismic issue feels overwhelming and the trajectory can seem inevitable, but it isn't. We understand the causes and we already have solutions. So as we know, one of the largest contributors to the pollution heating our planet is fast fashion. Now don't worry, I'm not going to wag my finger at everyone in the room who's wearing polyester, but I do want to highlight the severe issue that has arisen from fast fashion. We've gotten to a point in China where one of the epicenters of the global textile waste, there's a saying that goes, you could tell the color of the season just by looking at the color of the rivers. So I'm sure this isn't news to anyone. People have probably seen landscapes similar to this, either waterways or other forms of terrariums being egregiously polluted by textile waste. So since this isn't news, why haven't we gotten to a sustainable form of fashion? Well, people know that fast fashion relies heavily on pollutive materials and not to mention labor exploitation and animal cruelty, but this still is happening because many can't seem to find an accessible, sustainable alternative. So that's why Mycorrhiza Fashion, a collective of engineers, designers, and mycologists, chose to create a mycelium textile that allows anyone to express themselves while respecting the environment and the people living in it. We are forging circular pathways so that we could go from roots to runway and back to roots. So, my mycology journey began in 2019 when I was attending the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy. I joined a research project focused on cleaning aquatic environments with fungi. It was my very first introduction to micromediation, which is essentially the process in which fungi use its enzymes to break down pollutants, including complex hydrocarbons. So by the end of the experiment, we found that white rot species that we had cultivated had actually cleaned the polluted water that had contained motor oil, Congo red, and other model pollutants. So essentially, what we found was that fungi can eat garbage, which was mind-boggling. Like, let that sit with you for a second, because when I found that out, I mind imploded. That is so cool. Caveat being that obviously this is an uber simplification of micromediation because fungi doesn't indiscriminately digest any waste the same way an animal eats food. In reality, micromediation is more accurately described as the process in which fungi uses their digestive enzymes to break down toxic pollutants into simpler compounds that could be more easily entered into natural nutrient cycles. But I mean that the truth still holds that fungi can eat garbage, which I think is pretty cool. So that had me like, oh my goodness, I need to continue working with mycelium and fungi as a medium in any way that I can. And so moving on, I was so amazed by the experiment that I knew I wanted to continue working with fungi as a medium for building a more sustainable world. So I started experimenting on my own, growing mycelium into cups and bowls, exploring how far I could push this living material. And at the same time, my interest in fashion was growing. But so was my awareness of how harmful the industry is to the environment. So that pushed me to start thinking about making clothing and accessories out of biomaterials, such as the one on the screen. And I even tried recreating a version of the shoes Doja Cat wore to the VMAs. I don't know if y'all have seen this image before, but I was like, I thought that was so cool. So I was using pink oyster mycelium to try to recreate that, and honestly, it was so much fun. But then had the realization that, wait, this could create a net positive change. So what I mean by that is making new biomaterials is great, but it's ultimately a passive approach to the climate crisis because it doesn't address the mountains of textile waste already sitting in landfills and leaking microplastics into the environment. So I wanted to take a more active, solutions-driven approach into climate action, something that dealt directly with the problem we already have. And then suddenly, my two once parallel passions, mycology and fashion, weren't parallel anymore. They started converging into what is now Mycorrhiza Fashion. So here's how our active approach tackles the pollution problem head-on. So first, we collect textile waste at its source. We take discarded materials generated by fast fashion companies, waste that would otherwise end up in landfills. So right now we're working with textile scraps provided by the Atlanta Recycling Company, including synthetic fibers, which would normally take hundreds of years to degrade. And then we introduce it to fungi, capable of producing enzymes that break down these fibers into less harmful compounds. So instead of letting plastic sit for centuries, we guide a biological process that accelerates decomposition and transforms the material. And then finally, we output a functional fabric. So the final stage is where the magic happens. We then output a new mycelium-based textile. We're not just reducing pollution, we're creating a material that could re-enter the fashion ecosystem sustainably to help clean the planet. So what we found in research, for more context, I am currently doing research as a materials science and engineering student at Georgia Tech. And some of this has been conducted in the cell biology labs on campus. And we found that in actuality, this process is much more complex than it appears. So yes, fungi are capable of breaking down these materials, but based on the data we've collected so far, the degradation happens at a much slower rate than we would like. The biology works, but the timeline doesn't yet match the urgency of the problem. So our solution to that is basically more microbes need to join the party. So what now? Whenever we hit a roadblock or challenge, our team reminds ourselves that nature always has a solution. So if fungi alone weren't breaking down the waste fast enough, then we need to rethink the ecosystem. And that's when we realized to accelerate the degradation rate, more microbes, yes, need to join the party. So by bringing additional microorganisms into the process, we could create a collaborative microbial community that works far more efficiently than fungi on their own. So we looked to bacteria. After a deep dive into the literature, we came across an article called Manufacturing of Highly Active Thermophile PETase PHL7 and PHL-MUT3 using E. coli. And it had a line that stopped us in our tracks. It reads, and I quote, the unpurified fermentation supernatant of PHL-MUT3 fermentation was able to completely degrade our PET film sample after 16 hours of incubation. Which is insane. That's actually, let me repeat that phrase, completely degrade. That's incredible. So for context, PET is one of the most ubiquitous and stubborn synthetic polymers in textile waste. The fact that a bacterial enzyme could break it down entirely is major. So it shows that fungi aren't the only players here, and bacteria are also essential allies in solving this pollution problem. So the challenge? PHL7 is not widely accessible for research teams like ours. So for now, we're working with other bacteria that have been coded to produce PETase. And then we're actively running experiments, testing conditions, and refining our approach. So results are on the way, and please stay tuned. So getting back to where fashion comes into play, by partnering with different designers, engineers, and researchers, we're showing that textile waste can be transformed from scraps to roots to runways to hiking trails to construction sites and eventually around the world. We're so excited to see where our community and future customers take the material next. So what's on the screen on the left is actually a dress that was created from textile waste and white rot fungi that was walked down the runway at the Atlanta Sustainable Fashion Show last spring. On the top is we worked with an industrial designer to create these shoes. And then there's also been some applications that were outside of our original scope. For example, some designers came to us who wanted to use it as like lining in a toolbox, and then even Southwire approached us to see if we could come up with a sustainable alternative to their wire separators and their cables. And I was like, oh my goodness, like did not realize the versatility of this mycelium product. So with all of that in mind, what are the next steps to tackling this problem, given the context that we are now aware of different biomaterial technologies available to us? Well, one is to buy intentionally. So educate yourself on which companies truly follow through on their sustainability commitments, those that make products built to last your lifetime, not just the lifetime of a trend, and be mindful of greenwashing. So for example, H&M once marketed items as recycled when the only recycled component was the tag. Absolutely egregious, that was horrible. So resources like Remake, Good On You, and Fashion Revolution's Transparency Index can help you evaluate material sourcing, labor practices, carbon emissions, and overall environmental responsibility. Two is to take care of your things. So extend the life of what you already own, make repairs, mend what you can. Washing less, washing cold, and air drying all help reduce environmental impact, and longevity is one of the most underrated climate solutions. And then three, I think it's so important to mention this, but touch grass. Like seriously, go outside, spend time in the biosphere you're trying to protect. Building a relationship with the natural world makes it much easier to care for, and how can we protect something we never engage with? So strengthen your connection to the planet that sustains you. And then finally, just as mycorrhiza denotes a symbiotic relationship between plants and fungi, I am inviting all of you to join the Mycorrhiza Fashion community so that together we could foster our relationship between plants, fungi, and animals to grow a sustainable future. Thank you so much. I was trying to make that brief because I know we have to wrap up by 7, but that's essentially all I got. So if you scan the QR code at the top, that takes you to our site. You could see some of the projects that we've been working on, upcoming fashion events that we may be engaging with, and then below is my LinkedIn if you have any scientific inquiries or want to ask more about mycorrhiza fashion. I love talking about this.